going on.
It's very difficult unless we have the vaccine.
Yeah, it will take time.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. Vaccine will take another. They are claiming by beginning of next year, but I don't think so.
Vinod, you can.
Yes, sir. A very good afternoon to all of you. Today is our 5th day of our 10 days national seminar on current trends in life sciences. Today we have our honorable guest, Professor Dhruva Kumar Jha, who is a professor, Department of Botany, Guwahati University, Assam, with us. He'll be delivering a speech on bioremediation. I welcome you, sir. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. B.G. Unni, who is our advisor as well as Director, Academics and Research. I welcome you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Naveen Mohan, who is our beloved principal and also the convener of this program to this event, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to welcome all the participants, the academicians, research scholars, postdoctoral fellows, undergraduates and postgraduates of various universities all over India to this program. Next, I'd like to welcome Ms. Resna P., Assistant Professor in Microbiology, to introduce the guest to the speak.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes. Audible.
Good afternoon to all. Today, our speaker is Professor Dhruva Kumar Jha. He's from Department of Botany from Guwahati University, Assam, and he obtained his PhD in botany from Northeastern Hill University, and he joined Guwahati University as a lecturer in 1991, and he has teaching and research experience of about 28 years. And he guided in PhDs and MPhil, about 27 PhDs and 10 MPhils are produced. And his publications are about 100, and total citations are about 2,446. And he's editor of Indian Pathology Springma, and he handled the projects of about 8, and he organized several international and national seminars and workshops, and he is a member of research advisory committees of different universities and institutes and boards of PG studies and research studies and schools. And about his fellowships, he is a fellow of Indian Mycological Society and fellow of Indian Pathological Society and fellow of Indian Society of Mycology and Plant Pathology. And his major research areas include plant microbe interactions for plant improvement, microbial diversity, and biological control of plant diseases. And he is one of the members of different professional society, Association of Microbiologists of India, Microbiologist Society, Indian Society of Mycology and Plant Pathology, Indian Phytopathological Society, Indian Mycological Society, and Indian Science Congress Association, etc. And he is a reviewer of many journals like Mycological Research, Biotech, Plus One, Agricultural Research, Indian Phytopathology, World Journal on Microbiology and Biotechnology, National Academy Science Letters, Journal of Advanced Research, Environment Technology and Innovation, Basic Microbiology, Brazilian Archives of Biology and Technology, and Ecological Indicators. Thank you, sir, and welcome you, sir, for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rasna.
Okay, thank you.
So shall I
Now
start?
the floor is open for Now the floor is open for presentation.
Okay.
Dhruva Kumar,
So,
sir, please carry on.
Good afternoon to all of you. Principal Dr. Mohan, my old friend Dr. Unni, and faculty members of the college, and dear participants. It's really a matter of great pleasure for me to be the part of your a national webinar or e-seminar. When Dr. Unni, he spoke to me, I think day before yesterday. So I did not give a second thought. Actually, Dr. Unni, you will be surprised. I did not even hear about the date. Since how far it was from the date when you talked to me. So I eagerly accepted it because we have a long contact with Dr. Unni, and whenever he says something, I just cannot refuse it. So I am really, I really would like to thank all of you, all the organizers, for having invited me to present one small part of my work, which we are doing it here. I am thankful to Resna also for nicely introducing me. So thank you very much. And now I will go to the presentation. I will try to complete it within the stipulated time, provided the connectivity is smoothly.
Yeah, that's the main problem.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. What is it? Slide you can bring.
I am giving in the slide mode.
Yeah. No, it's not showing here. It's not
It's
showing.
not showing.
No.
How to do it then?
Sir,
Then
you can click the present now. There will be a button
Present.
in
Okay,
the
okay. Yes, just a minute, just a minute.
yeah. You can click it, sir.
Entire screen, no?
Yeah, entire screen, sir.
Is it okay now?
Then
No.
you can click on that screen and you can give share.
Okay.
Screen
This one,
and
no?
yeah. No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Not it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
coming.
It's okay.
Now you can go to the presentation, sir. You can click on that presentation button.
Is it okay
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Perfect.
So, am I
You
audible?
can keep
Yes,
it
yes,
full
everything
screen,
is
sir.
fine. Fine.
It is full screen. I have given in the
Okay.
presentation mode.
Sir,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
it is
it's
fine.
okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So I will be speaking on one of my project, which was funded by UGC, and I have pooled the data, some of the data, and it is about the application of microbial consortium for bioremediation of coal mine spoils. I think many of you must be knowing this. Assam has a lot of coal mines, and the type of coal mining is open cast coal mining, where the surface, it is called a surface mining technique. For extraction of coal, they remove the topsoil. Through literature, we have come to know, or it is evident that this technique is scientifically poor because it disrupts the landscape. And because of this equilibrated geomorphic system, there is a problem which is created that is called as acid mine drainage, AMD. And there is contamination of heavy metals. The soils are getting contaminated. The problem is these heavy metals, they do not get degraded, but they persist in the soil, get accumulated in the food chain, and creates a lot of toxicity for every organism present in the ecosystem or present in the niche. So remediation of such heavy metal polluted, degraded soil is one of the important. If we want to save the life forms, this is one of the important area which should be worked out. Now the problem is, it is not that the remediation techniques are not available. The remediation techniques are available, but all these techniques are temporary because they do not completely remove the heavy metals from the soil. And apart from that, there are a lot of side effects, a lot of problems which are associated with these techniques. Now, what is the alternative? The alternative is phytoremediation, which if you go through the literature, you will find that extensive works have been carried out regards to phytoremediation. And in phytoremediation, plants are used to sequester, stabilize, and detoxify heavy metal pollutants from the soil. Now, the reliability or effectivity of this technique, it is dependent upon certain parameters. One parameter is what is the concentration of heavy metal in the soil, what is the level of bioavailability of those contaminants, and what is the ability of the hyperaccumulator, those plants which are used for cultivation or for growing on contaminated soils, they are called as hyperaccumulator. So what is their ability to accumulate the contaminants in their biomass? The problem, what is the limiting factor? These are the limiting factor. Another limiting factor is most of these hyperaccumulators, when they are grown on polluted soil, their growth rate is very slow, and consequently they produce a very limited amount of biomass. Since limited amount of biomass is produced, therefore complete sequestration of heavy metal doesn't take place. Now I will come to the second part of that. That is because I am working on microorganisms, especially arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi and PGPR. And when we went through the literature, we found that AM fungi as well as PGPRs, they are used in different areas for manipulation of the rhizosphere. Now there is a new concept also that is called as rhizosphere engineering. If we can, with the help of AM fungi and PGPR, can we engineer the rhizosphere? Means modify, not only by inoculating them, modify the root structure, the complete architecture of the roots of the plants. So therefore, there is another area. This is another area which is very, very important. If we can manipulate the rhizosphere of the hyper accumulators with these organisms. Second one is these organisms, they are available. They might be present in the culture collection center of different universities. But the question is, can we use them? Answer is yes, we can use them. But then you can ask, why did we isolate these organisms from the metal contaminated area? The answer is because these organisms which have been isolated from the local soil, from the contaminated soil, they are well adapted, and therefore they will work properly, they will work more efficiently than the one which can be procured or which can be obtained from other culture collection center. The reason behind is when you buy it or when you procure it from somewhere else and put it into the soil, there is a time of adjustment. Those organisms, since they are not used to the situations present in the field, so they would require certain time period to get used to that situation, and during that period there might be decrease in the efficiency of those organisms, and therefore now it is preferred that indigenous hyperaccumulators are being isolated and then they are being applied. This rhizosphere manipulation strategy it is becoming very popular, and there is a new term which is used. It is called that when we use arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi and PGPR, the new terminology which is used is mycorrhizoremediation. So we are not only using the plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, but we are using arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi together. And when we manipulate the rhizosphere with these two organisms, we want them to work in a synergistic manner so that the ultimate objective of not only improving the growth of the plant, but also the removal of heavy metal contaminants from soil is achieved. And therefore, it is always preferred to use the indigenous strains of bacteria as well as the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. If you look at bioremediation, so through bioremediation, we can rehabilitate the area where there is very meager growth of plant is there. So if we can revegetate that, there will be carbon sequestration, we can improve the biodiversity, we will get biomass which can be used for energy, we will be improving soil quality and health, and we can also be improving the water set management, and wastewater treatment can be done. Now you see this photograph, what it is showing three aspects. One is phytoremediation, another one is rhizoremediation, And when we combine these two, that is what is called as bioremediation. I will not go into the different mechanisms, like there phytovolatilization, phytoevaporation. These are the mechanisms of phytoremediation. Then we have absorption, desorption, precipitation, redox reaction, chilation. These are the mechanisms of rhizode remediation. When we combine both, means we are combining the hyperaccumulator with the indigenous bacteria and arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, and we want to, we are instructing them indirectly to not only improve the plant growth, but also to remediate the soil which is contaminated with heavy metals by using all the mechanisms which are mentioned in this photograph. Now, this is one of the work which have been carried out at different places, and it is shown that when we use grasses in the soil, bacteria are already there. There are different fungi which grow there because they are one of the important part of the soil flora. And when these you are seeing in the photograph, there are trees and there are grasses. So these grasses, they have adventitious roots. So the roots, they actually spread, and when they come in contact with these microorganisms, they help in the binding of the soil. So soil erosion is checked. And these organisms, they also help in alleviating the level of different contaminants. You must have heard, no? In aeroplane there is a black box, and that black box, it contains all the information about the aeroplane. So whenever there is an accident, what is the first step which is taken is to look for the black box. So in microbial ecology, we call rhizosphere as the black box of the plant. Every information is there. Which organisms will come, which organisms will interact, what will be the output of those interactions when they are interacting with the plant. Every information is there. How, what are the mechanisms of action? So rhizosphere is one of the, what I want to highlight is rhizosphere is one of the important aspect when we are working on plant growth improvement, or when we are working on the utility of plant with respect to decontamination of soil. Rhizosphere is really one wonderful area which should be very closely looked into. Now what happens, see, this is a photograph and I have taken it from somewhere, but I forgot to give the reference. I'm sorry for that. If you look at this diagram, what is there? There are three aspects. One is the pathogen, another one is the PGPR, and then you can see there are elicitors. Elicitors are signal molecules. Now there is a competition. Another problem when we plant any sapling on contaminated soil is not only they are getting confronted with the heavy metal contaminants, they are also confronted with some pathogenic organisms. So here you can see the yellowish are the PGPR, reddish are the pathogen, and there is a competition between the two. And it has been observed through various works that these PGPRs, they are highly competitive because they respond to the elicitors faster than the pathogens. And therefore, they get into the root system. And when they get into the root system, you know that we have the immune system. Even plants, they have got the immune system. So the plant will react. And that is what is this reaction. Through this reaction, they produce different molecules. And those molecules, they are called, what they do, they develop the induced systemic resistance in the plant. You must have read that these pathogens, they require certain level of iron concentration in the rhizosphere if they want to proliferate. And these these plants, what they do, they produce these plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, they produce chelators. And these chelators, what they do, they remove the iron concentration. They dissolve iron, and the iron moves away from the root. So because of that, the concentration of iron in the rhizospheric region gets reduced, and consequently, these organisms, the pathogens, they are being avoided by the plants. Now, you can see here, these are the different management or different mechanisms for the management of rhizosphere for remediation of abandoned mines. So you have manipulation of the absorption side when you are applying microbes and plants. Then there is a change in the pH, rhizosphere pH, because of the activity of microbes. Lot of different activities are taking place, and all the activities, they have been listed in this photograph. So what up in the background of what I told you just now, what we thought that we should work on this, and therefore we had a project submitted to UGC. And initially what we did, we went for a long-term study, and that was for 2 years. For 2 years, we had collected samples from the field. We had analyzed the physico-chemical characters. We had analyzed the heavy metal contaminants in the soil. We went for the biological properties in the form of enzymes and the microbes present there. And if you go through the literature, because I told you the open cast coal mining is practiced in this part of the country, and if you go through the literature of this area, probably ours is the first comprehensive work of this nature which has been carried out. Now, there are two important problems. One problem is the soils are highly acidic, and second problem is that there is metal contamination. So the highly acidic nature of the soil is because of the iron pyrite, which is present in the coals, and sulfide. Iron pyrite and sulfide, when they come in contact with either water or oxygen, they lead to increase. In the acidity, and it is called as acid mine drainage, and therefore the pH of the soil is lower. Now, this is the area, photograph of the area where this work was carried out. It is Makum coal fields of Tinsukia district, which is in the state of Assam of our country. Now, you see this photograph, it is showing the open cast coal mines. This this is what is present in the field. Acid mine drainage. This is the water, and because of contamination, because of acidity, it is like this. Now, one important problem here is when you work from the biology point of view in this area, it is very difficult to work because the area is not static. It keeps on changing because of the mining activities which are being carried out by the different mining agencies. Most of them, they are government agencies, but they do not follow the instructions, or they do not follow the rules and legislations which have been put forward for such type of activities. This is not in Assam, this is in Meghalaya, because I just wanted to give you a view. In Meghalaya, the type of mining which is called as rat hole mining. There also coal is there in Jantia Hills, and this is how they do it. You must have read last year, there was leakage of this water went inside, because what they do, the roof is very thin and the water seeped down, and many miners, they were dead. EE is the very important plant which is endemic to the state of Meghalaya, especially Garo Hills and Jantia Hills. This is feature plant. The biology students, they must be knowing this is an insectivorous plant. Just to popularize this plant, because it is not available in every part of the country, I have put this picture here. And you will be surprised, this plant, Nepenthes khasiana, it grows only in the area where mining has been abandoned in Jantia Hills. Now, this is this slide. What it is showing the overburdened soil, the spoils. There, the concentration of nickel, zinc, copper, and arsenic. So you see Now, what we did, when we started our fieldwork, we took 3 coal mines which are at different stages of their growth, means from the day of mining. So Lido was the youngest coal mine spoil. It was followed by Tirap, which was slightly higher in age, and Tikok was highest. And then we had taken a forest for reference just to find out what exactly is happening, whether there is no change or there is change. So from this picture, it is quite clear that the concentration of heavy metals, when you compare with forest, it is very, very high. And another point is there, with age, it is getting slightly reduced, not too much, but it is getting slightly reduced. And this S1W1, S2W2, it is S1W1, it is the first year data, S2W2 is the second year data from the day of the first sampling. So what we did, as I told you, we had gone for physicochemical parameters, plus we went for biological parameters, and in biological parameters, we had selected 2 because our work was specific as per the mandate of the project. So we had gone for isolation of AM fungal spores from the soil, and you see from here how the spore density of the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, how it is varying. You see, this is the youngest, Lido is the youngest, so minimum population is there. Tirap, slightly younger, so more population is there. Tikok is still, sorry, not older. Tikok is still older, so there is more population. And forest, as it was reference soil, and forest which was selected for this study was quite far off. It was not very in the close proximity to these mining sites. So you see what is the population. Population is significantly higher than the mining sites. So these are the mycorrhizal spores. You see, they are so beautiful. They are so colorful. They have been identified. The names are written. I will not go into detail of that. I thought that I must expose you to these organisms because these are wonderful organisms, and they really work. They work wonders in the soil which are deficient in nutrients, especially phosphorus. Now, in other parts of the world, they have already been used for agriculture as well as for regeneration of forestry. Unfortunately, in our country, dairy has done a little bit of work. Otherwise, this is not properly worked out for such type of activities. The second aspect, what we did, these fungi, means arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, when they grow, they produce a protein that is called as glomalin-related soil protein. So we actually, what our idea was to get second information which will substantiate the spore density. So this protein, because the population is, in the previous slide you saw that the population was changing. It was least in Lido, then higher in Tirap, then higher in Tikok, and maximum in forest. So the glomalin related soil protein, because production of this protein, it depends upon the density of spore. So you see it is showing the same trend. And therefore, we concluded that our spore data is completely correct because the other parameter which we had analyzed to substantiate our spore data, it is almost related, linked. Then what we did, we also studied whether these proteins, means glomalin related protein, soil protein, whether it is produced just like that or it has to do something with the sequestration. So when we worked on that, this is what we have found. We found that the sequestration capacity of this protein is not identical for all the different types of metalloids. You see, it was least for chromium and it was almost comparable for nickel and copper. You know that all the organisms, they evolve. They, especially, there is a theory in the biology that if the organism has got a short lifespan, their evolution is faster, and therefore we have different problems with the health, like development of multi-drug resistant organisms. Because of this particular property of these organisms, their lifespan is very short, and therefore their changes are very fast. And therefore these organisms, many of these organisms, they develop a strategy to overcome new situation. What is the new situation? The new situation was contamination, heavy metal contamination, because heavy metals are toxic. And because of toxicity, it is not that they are toxic only to human beings or only to higher plants, they are toxic to them also. But slowly, because their lifespan is short, so within that short lifespan, they change themselves, they evolve, and the newer strains, the new strains which develop, some of them, they have better ability to sustain, to tolerate that condition. So the richness abundance of Glomaceae, which you saw in the previous slides, that shows that only. It is showing the enhanced resistance and stability in disturbed condition. What we did, we had made a correlation between GRSP and the sequestration of heavy metals. And what we saw was there was this GRSP was directly affecting, not directly but indirectly affecting the growth of the AM fungi, colonization and sporulation. Then the second organism which we took into account was plant growth promoting rhizobacteria. So we had isolated a total of 500 isolates we had isolated from the entire area. And then they were characterized following cultural characters, morphological and biochemical characteristics. These are the growth promoting traits, plant growth promoting traits, which they were, all the isolates, they were screened whether they are having growth promoting traits or not. And we were surprised to find that 71.2 out of 500, around 356 isolates, they showed the plant growth promoting traits. And the traits were, different traits were there, which are there in the slide. So this is the number of isolates for these particular genera, which are producing IA, ammonia, hydrogen cyanide, this. Though more than 70% of the isolates were found to have PJP traits, but they failed to improve. See, these all these 500 isolates were isolated from the field, and the real picture of the field, which I showed you in the previous slide, was that there were absolutely scanty growth or no growth. So the question was, when these plant growth promoting organisms, when they are present, what exactly they are doing? But they are, that is why we have concluded that they fail to improve the plant growth because of degradation of the soil, spoiled soil. So we concluded that this poor growth was heavy metal, because of heavy metal, and then low population density of these organisms, and poor geomorphic system. Now, this 356 PGPR isolates, they were screened for their ability to resist heavy metals and metalloids through turbidometric test. And the result of this test, it showed that 20 bacterial isolates, they were multi-tolerant, means they tolerated more than one metal or metalloid. And these isolates, which what was the concentration? We had used 1 millimolar concentration of nickel, zinc, copper, and arsenic. Because if you remember in the previous slide, I had shown you that these were the major metal and metalloids which were present in the field. So again, I am highlighting it that all the 20 multi-tolerant bacterial strains, they were isolated from not one chronosequence soil, but from different chronosequence soil. And through literature, we could find out that they could adapt because of either there was a change in the chromosome or it was encoded in the plasmid. These traits were encoded either in the chromosome or in the plasmids. But unfortunately, because this was a project for 3 years, so we could not work beyond that. So we do not know. If you ask me what is the long-term stability of these multi-tolerant traits of these PGPR strains or isolates, I am not in a position to tell you because it could not be worked out further. Then these bacterial isolates, which were having PGP traits, they were also studied for their ability to produce biosurfactants. And the preliminary evaluation, we had used a drop collapse assay. It showed 55 of the 356 isolates, because these 356 isolates, they were having plant growth promoting traits. So out of them, 55, they could produce biosurfactants. Another parameter which was used was emulsification assay. And so on the basis of that, we have, this is the emulsification index of some of the important, I have not included everything here. So some of the important PGPR isolates, one important one is Pseudomonas nitroreducens, and another one is Serratia marcescens. These were the two bacterial isolate which produced highest emulsification index after incubating for 72 hours. So this is a drop collapse test. I will not go into detail of this. So we have, as I told you in the previous slide, we have selected Pseudomonas nitroreducens and Serratia marcescens. So when we studied what amount of, with the help of biosurfactant, what amount of crude, it was used using crude oil. So what amount of crude they can extract. So it was 500 milligram per liter for Pseudomonas nitroreducens and 610 milligram per liter for Serratia marcescens. Now this is another important character of biosurfactant, and that is critical mycelic concentration. So you see, with the increase in the concentration of biosurfactant, the surface tension, actually this is to measure the surface tension of the crude oil, so how it is decreasing. So what it indicates that these two bacteria which were having ability to produce biosurfactant, with the increase in biosurfactant concentration, their surface tension is reduced. That means they are degrading. When more biosurfactants are produced, more amount of crude oil is being degraded. Then we also observed, now after that we started concentrating in these two bacteria. So we also studied the heavy metal metalloid chelating property of crude biosurfactant, which we had obtained from these two bacteria. And you see this Serratia marcescens, in some cases, like in case of copper, it was more efficient than Pseudomonas nitroreducens. The meaning is these two bacteria, they do not show equivalent ability in case of the different metal and metalloids. It was changing. So biosurfactant produced by Pseudomonas nitroreducens, the chelating percentage data is given there, and same thing for Serratia marcescens is also given. So what is the outcome of this study? The outcome was the biosurfactant produced by Pseudomonas nitroreducens was most suitable for bioremediation of heavy metals, while for the one which was produced by Serratia marcescens, it was for metalloid. So then we had gone for FTIR analysis of the spectra, FTIR spectra of the biosurfactants extracted from both the bacterial isolates. Now, when we analyze this, So we found that actually we did this one to find out the nature of the biosurfactant which were produced. So Pseudomonas nitroreducens, it produced rhamnolipid. The chemical nature of that biosurfactant was rhamnolipid, whereas the one produced by Serratia marcescens, it was not rhamnolipid, it was lipopeptide. So this is another finding which shows that they do not produce similar type of biosurfactant. They are producing different types of biosurfactant, and probably this could be the reason why one was efficient for heavy metals, another one was efficient for metal alloy. Then we went for in vivo screening. So this is the data of in vivo screening, and the multi-tolerant potential. These were the isolates which showed multi-tolerant potential, and this is based on this nickel, zinc, copper, arsenic. They were having the highest PGP traits and biosurfactant emulsifying capacity, so they were considered for in vivo test. And similarly, we had selected 10 arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi based on their relative abundance and spore frequency. These bioinnoculants, they were applied, I'm talking about the in vivo experiment, they were applied 3 times at regular interval of 1 month. And altogether, hello? Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, audible.
Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Please continue, sir.
So we had used, we will not go into the detail of, how much time do I have?
You have enough time, sir. No
So you
issues.
can take 20 minutes also.
Okay. So there were 63 pots which were used for this, and there were 3 replicates. This experiment was continued for 3 months, and this is the data. We have PGPRs, we have AM fungi separately, and then this is the data. So on the basis of this biometric growth parameter results, we have got 3 bacterial isolates: Pseudomonas nitroreducens, Pseudomonas putida. Then we have Rhizophagus fasciculatus, Funeliformis mossi, and Rhidochera fulva. So based on in vivo and in vitro screening, the PGPR strains which were considered for further work was Pseudomonas nitroreducens and Pseudomonas. There were 2 actually. In fact, there were 2 isolates of Pseudomonas nitroreducens, 4-TK-C84 and Bio S1, and there was Pseudomonas putida, Bio S4. And then we had 3, as it was evident from the previous slide, there were 3 species of arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. So we had used these organisms for manipulation of the rhizosphere. There are many hyperaccumulators, but we had selected GMAs for our work because it is easier to grow under net out condition, greenhouse conditions. So we had selected GMAs, and the seeds are easily available. You don't have, if you take some other plants, so it is a problem to get the seed. Now, one point which I want to highlight here is that initially we started working in the field to find out whether our isolates, whether they are working in the field, because all these works were carried out under controlled conditions. So either in the greenhouse or in the lab. So we wanted to find out whether they are working in the field or not. But as I told you previously, that the field is so, in the field disturbance is so high that you cannot guarantee if you go after 10 days or 15 days, you are standing at the same place or you are standing somewhere else. So we had selected an area, and then we had transplanted these, we had sown these seeds, then we had inoculated it, but when we went for taking the data, nothing was there. So, and it is so cost intensive that you cannot hire a person to look after your field because that much money was not there in the project. So we had to abandon the idea of working in the field, and we thought of we changed our strategy, and then we had worked this in the greenhouse. So we had actually used 85 pre-saturated heavy metal. We had taken 85 pots, and they were pre-saturated with heavy metals. Because this is what is advocated by different authors who have worked in this area. So we have taken different parameters. You see shoot length, shoot drive weight, root drive weight, and then we had inoculated the plants. Now you see the photograph. This is actually sorry. Now, if you see the first actually this there was a problem. The leveling has gone inside. So these are the inoculated pots, and these are the control pots. So you can yourself make out the differences in the growth parameters, which was there because of inoculation. This one, the second B is better. In the B, these T5, T6, T4, T3, T1, and control. So this T6 is these pots. There was a consortium. We had applied. It is written here. All those organisms which I had shown you in the previous slides, which were selected, they were applied together in the T6, and these were alone, separate. You see, this is the shoot height, this is the root length. You see, same thing. How difference is there? The degree of difference you can make out by looking at these pictures. Now, these are the data. So, as I told you, this last one, first we have the control, then we have different combination of treatments, and the last one is where we had applied everything. Pseudomonas and the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. We had 3 bacterial isolates, we had 3 fungal isolates, we had put them together, and then you see what is this first half. It is representing the concentration of metal and metalloid, nickel, zinc, copper, arsenic in shoot. So compared to control, you see it is so high, many times high in the shoot of the plant where application was by consortium, and this is for root. So in the root we did not get good. This is very important. Why this is important? Because less concentration in the root indicates that they have been transported to the shoot. So the present study revealed that the accumulation of heavy metalloid concentration was either in the root or in the shoot. Nickel, copper, zinc concentration in the shoot was maximum with consortium, as I showed you in the previous slide, and it was decreased in the root of the same treatment compared to the control. So I have already told you this is indicating that there is a translocation of heavy metals from root to shoot. The concentration of arsenic in the shoot was maximum in case of R. fulvum, while concentration of AS in root was maximum in case of Pseudomonas, nitroreducens, and R. fulvum. Now here you will see that the data are even in negative. This is the shoot uptake of heavy metal, and this is the root uptake of heavy metal. So this negativity is compared to the control. That is why that means in the control it is higher, And when we compared our data with the control, means our data means the data of the treated plant with the control, naturally, because it was less than the control, so it was going to the negative. So what is the conclusion of this?